So let's start with the consumer perception or perception study. So first and foremost, a consumer perception study, unlike some things in science, consumer perception studies is super well named. It's like exactly what it sounds like. So it's exactly perceiving how the consumer feels or how they experience the product. And so generally that's through, non-validated questionnaires. So that yields subjective data. That's still very valuable information because that helps the brand and it helps also the consumer really understand how people are using the product, what sorts of benefits are they feeling. And so non-validated really just means what are the main questions that the brand has that they want to ask a consumer so they can get that information to then maybe iterate and create a 2.0 product, or maybe it's to sell that product in and of itself through research-backed marketing claims. And then also in consumer perception studies, there's generally only one study group. It's open label, so everyone in the cohort or in the study knows exactly what brand the product is coming from and what specific product it is. And they're all testing it at the same time for the same study duration. And then also in perception studies, there generally isn't any sort of, like statistical analysis. It's more of evaluating those answers to the non-validated questionnaires. I still think consumer perception studies are incredible. They're great for brands to figure out if a product is, being perceived as having certain benefits by their consumers or their intended, customer population, and, therefore they can make marketing claims that are actually based in data. So that's first and foremost, really what a consumer perception study is. And then if we hop to, what a clinical trial is, the difference there being, there can be a lot of different study designs. So there could be everything from, one or two groups. There could be, something called a crossover study where, there isn't the intervention product and there's, perhaps a placebo or a head-to-head, like another product that does something similar already on the market. And both groups try both products at different times. So the clinical trials in terms of study design can be more complex, and they generally are, larger than simply one group. And, as I mentioned, the non-validated questionnaires with perception studies, clinical trials use validated questionnaires. So again, they've gone through rigorous testing through other previous studies that have, therefore validated their use in certain, symptoms or conditions. And they also can use biomarkers, which is really interesting. So biomarkers really is just a fancy term for, quantitative measures that we get either from, trackers like a Fitbit or an Oura Ring. So they can track anything from like sleep to exercise, heart rate variability, weight changes, and different things like that. There's also different ways to evaluate how skin changes over a study with the integration of a dermatologist or another healthcare provider, so they can be a part of the evaluation of these different validated questionnaires and or biomarkers. And then something you might have heard of is that there's also placebo controlled. And so if you see something called placebo controlled, that's not a perception study, that falls within the realm of a clinical trial. So placebo is, it looks very similar, ideally exactly the same as the test product, but there is no active ingredient. And so people are really able to test when you're trying the intervention product and the placebo product, you're really able to test what is the intervention product doing versus the placebo, or rather, no active ingredient. In contrast to a perception study that's really evaluating, the perceived benefits by the consumer, the clinical trials are actually really looking at the safety and efficacy or the effectiveness of the product, and then therefore we can make more quantitative research claims that are backed by statistical analyses. So these claims are then what are, the research team, what we deem as statistically significant. So we're able to report that and make sure that all of it is, compliant with FDA and FTC regulations.